So we don't know exactly when Jesus was born, but he was very likely born in the fall of 4 BC. Now, how do we respond, having looked at some of these things, to what we should do about Christmas? Let me give you a few things from the spirit of prophecy on this. And I'm not going to read everything I have here, but for those who might be visiting, Ellen White is one of the founders of the Adventist Church. Brilliant woman, wrote more than any other woman in American history, especially on themes of religion, education, and diet. But she's got a number of references here about how do you deal with it. Letters of inquiry have come to us asking, should we have a Christmas tree? Will it not be like the world? We answer you can make it if like the world if you have a disposition to do so, or you can make it as unlike the world as possible. There's no particular sin in selecting a fragrant evergreen and placing it in our churches. But the sin lies in the motive that prompts you to action and the use that is made of the gifts placed upon the tree. Did you get that? Gifts placed on the tree. Christmas and New Year celebrations can and should be held in behalf of those who are helpless. God is glorified when we give to help those who have large families to support. Again, you notice that the context of these holidays is not what's in it for me and how much can I spend on myself and my family, but on giving to those who are struggling. Let not the parents take the position that the evergreen placed in the church for the amusement of the Sabbath school scholars is a sin. That's what she's calling the kids, the Sabbath school scholars. For it may be a great blessing. Keep before their minds benevolent objects. What does benevolent mean? A desire to give. See, if we would look at it as a desire to give instead of what are we going to get, that should be the spirit. A couple more thoughts. The 25th of December is supposed to be the day of the birth of Jesus, and its observance has become customary and popular. That hits the nail right on the head. But yet there is no certainty that we are keeping the veritable day of the Savior's birth. History gives us no certain assurance of this. The Bible does not give us the precise time. Had the Lord deemed this knowledge essential to our salvation, he would have spoken through his prophets and apostles that we might know all about the matter. But the silence of the Scriptures upon this point evidences to us that it is hidden from us for the wisest of purposes. By the way, you know that in some churches, going to church and celebrating in the Mass on Christmas is the most important time of the year to do that. And some of you have heard about Christians who go Christmas and Easter twice a year, because those are considered the two great high points, and some even weave it into salvation. As the 25th of December is observed to commemorate the birth of Christ, as the children have been instructed by precept and example that this was indeed the day of gladness and rejoicing, you will find it difficult to pass over this period without giving it some attention. It can be made to serve a very good purpose. The idea is, make it, if you're going to do it for what? Benevolence and to serve a good purpose. By the world, the holidays are spent in frivolity and extravagance and gluttony and display. Thousands of dollars will be worse than thrown away upon the coming Christmas and New Year's in needless indulgences. But it is our privilege to depart from the customs and practices of this degenerate age, and instead of expending means merely for the gratification of appetite or for needless ornaments and articles of clothing, we might make the coming holidays an occasion in which we honor and glorify God, to do it for good, to glorify God. And then here is the last reference. I'm sorry, I never gave you any of these. Several of these are from Adventist Home, page 482. And this one is from Adventist Review, 12/17, 1889. May the Lord forbid that any of us should be so narrow-minded as to overlook the event, speaking of Christmas, because there's an uncertainty in regarding the exact time. Let us do what we can to fasten the minds of the children upon those things that are precious to everyone who loves Jesus. Let us teach them how Jesus came into the world to bring hope, comfort, peace, and happiness to all. In other words, capitalize on the good things. Which brings us back to our scripture reading. Romans chapter 14. You have that? Paul was dealing with some of these issues with some of the early Christians who were being urged by the Jewish believers that the Gentile converts needed to keep all the Jewish holidays. And here's how Paul responds to that. In Romans 14, one person, and if you start with verse 1, receive one who is weak in the faith, but not to disputes over doubtful things. Don't argue about things that are doubtful. For one believes he might eat all things, but he who is weak eats only vegetables. Of course, here he's not talking at all about vegetarianism. He's talking about those who are doubtful, who have weak faith. They wouldn't eat any animals because they'd been offered to gods, and they thought, I'll be worshiping pagan gods if I eat that sheep or that chicken. You see what he's saying? He calls them weak in faith. There are some people who have that same attitude about Christmas. Why, if I go in that building and there's a wreath on the wall, I'll be worshiping pagan gods. I've actually run into that, believe it or not. It's kind of sad. We're missing the big point. Let me see here. Let him who eats despise not him who does not eat, and let not him who does not eat grudge him who eats, for God's received him. For who are you that judges another man's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Indeed, he'll be made to stand, for God is able to make him stand. One person esteems one day above another. Here's the part you want to catch. Another one esteems every day alike. Let each one be fully convinced in his own mind. Now, some have tried to apply this to the Sabbath commandment. It has nothing to do with one of the 10 commandments, talking about holidays and what do you do with what are you supposed to keep and observe and what aren't you? Let each one be convinced in his mind. Here's the point. He who observes the day observes it to the Lord. How? If you're going to recognize Christmas, how do you do it? To the Lord. Do it for good, to glorify God. He who does not observe the day, to the Lord he does not observe it. He who eats to the Lord, for he gives God thanks, and he who does not eat to the Lord, he does not eat and gives God thanks. For none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. So one of the things it's guarding us against is judging each other. Do I have any Bible right to tell you that you're supposed to recognize Christmas? Where's the scripture for that? There is none. And at the same time, those who don't feel that way, they shouldn't be condemning those who disagree with them. Does that make sense? Everyone needs to be persuaded in their own mind, and frankly, I think with all that's happening in the world today, that's the very last thing we should be worrying about.